Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Here we are on a Tuesday afternoon at 1 o'clock Eastern time, and here is your weekly Miami football update. We call it, there he is, we call it Miami Hurricanes Live, and we come your way for the 42nd straight week. Got the wholesome one on the line, repping the U, of course, and we always enjoy the conversation with Dwayne Holloway. You can catch him right here on a YouTube at the Wholesome One, HOLSUM, and the number one. Dwayne, how we doing today?
I'm blessed, man. Blessed. It's been an exciting 48 hours for the University of Miami, and I think the transfers, it's a little different this year than it was last year. Transfer portal U is still in effect, and let's see if we could transition the offseason Warriors to the fall and spring Warriors. But we'll see what the University of Miami has to offer, and we'll talk about that today.
Well, unfortunately, we're going to have to wait until September to find out if 6 and 7 is a thing of the past and whether that's going to get corrected. The only thing we can evaluate this team and this program on from here on out until they actually step on the field against an opponent is how well they work in spring and summer camp and how well the recruiting gets wrapped up in February. And then we got this transfer portal that you mentioned, which seemed to be working against the U this time last year, but seems to be working in Manny Diaz's favor this year. And the name that everybody's talking about, of course, is the ERIQ King from Houston, a guy that's accounted for a ton of touchdowns, won some big games, and has been a dynamic dual threat quarterback with the Cougars.
Right, absolutely. I've had to eat some crow on Twitter for what I said, and I spoke about the fact that on Twitter, and I still stand on that tweet, speaking about the fact that I kind of was excited for the production under Rick Lashley with the QBs that we have now. And that was more of my mindset that maybe this ERIQ King thing wasn't going to go through. And when you turn on the film, he's undeniable. He's a man that is, no matter what anyone has to say, his statistics and his film, I'm more of a film analysis guy. It speaks for itself. Dynamic with the football, a former wide receiver, came there as an athlete, played all over the field, kick return, wide receiver, running back, and then in 2018 took over as the QB and accounted for 50 total touchdowns. It's just, I had the Tate Martell syndrome, but not realizing that this young man is actually produced at the Division I level at Houston and has done it in some pretty good games against the likes of Oklahoma and being in those games. And Houston and Miami are very comparable. The more that I look at it, he will know how to play behind a so-so offensive line and make them something that doesn't really matter because the spread is more about playing outside in, as the great Cam Underwood says, turn it into 7-on-7. And the ERIQ King has a great way of doing that. So I've had to just go ahead and accept I was wrong about that. And hopefully him coming into this QB battle. Does anyone really think it's going to be a QB battle? I think it's more of the ERIQ King's job. And we're going to see what he can do in the orange and green, man. Honestly, I'm excited. I'm excited.
The numbers look really impressive from 2018 in the American Conference. And, of course, if you really follow college football, a lot of people of the Power 5 status and perspective look down on the Group of 5. But when you're especially talking about the Mountain West and you're talking about the American Conference, take Clemson away from the ACC right now. Mm-hmm. Check out the American Conference, compare it to the ACC, and they're pretty comparable leagues right now. I don't expect that to last for a long time. That hasn't been the case year after year after year, but for the last couple of years, very comparable. Mm-hmm. And ERIQ King, as you mentioned, 36 touchdowns, only 6 picks in 2018, ran for 600 yards, accounted for another 14 touchdowns on the ground. Not a whole lot of guys that you can find walking down the street that can put up 50 touchdowns in the American Conference. Wholesome One. So that's a lot of production.
It is, and it was something, like I said, I've spoken and accepted the fact that I was wrong about it, but it was more about the Tate Martell syndrome. Everyone was tweeting out him when he was at Ohio State, and those same 5 plays. I was all over the timeline, but this young man, he's proven. And like I said, the AAC and the ACC Coastal is very comparable. So it's not like he's taken a big step to where now he's playing up against these SEC or Big Ten defenses. He's going to be playing up against defenses that he's seen similar in the Big 12 when he played Oklahoma and similar in the AAC. And also, he's going to be playing teams that have almost all switched to the spread concept. Something I was spoken about on my channel. You know, the University of Miami is really kind of a decade behind in college football when it comes to our approach offensively. We've had some sprinkles in there with the James Coley spread and the Mark Richt second season RPO in 2017. But to dedicate to a spread and recruit to that spread and play the spread year in and year out, Miami has not done that up until this year with the hire of Rhett Lashley. And the ERIQ King can come in here and flourish in that system. And, you know, we're going to be playing, you know, the shootout versus North Carolina later on in the season. That's going to be a big game. They're a spread now. Georgia Tech is also a spread now. Virginia Tech has come over to a spread. So a lot of the teams that are on our side, Virginia, who won our division in the Coastal, is a spread triple option type. So at the end of the day, 4 out of the teams that are on our side that have been a thorn in our behind play the spread. Even Duke runs a hybrid spread pro style. So Miami was really behind the 8 ball on that. And now we can finally match up with them because everyone else has been playing 7-on-7 and we still thought we had the 0-1 offensive line and trying to blow people off the ball. And it doesn't work like that anymore moving into the 2020s in college football. But I can't wait to talk about our other transfer, an edge rusher. Everyone that knows me knows I played in the fronts and I played defensive end and defensive tackle in college. When we get over to Roche, the edge rusher, that is the part of the conversation I can't wait to start.
Well, you know, I was just going to note here with the ERIQ King before we move on to Roche. He played 2 Power 5 teams in 2018. They had a game against Arizona and they tore up the Wildcats. So he had a bit of a duel with Khalil Tate, if you're familiar with him, folks out there, and his dynamic playmaking ability, a kid that set the Pac-12 rushing record for a quarterback. And the ERIQ King lit him up for 246 yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks. And he ran for a couple touchdowns in that game. Very next week against Texas Tech, they lost the game, but it wasn't his fault. They put up 49 on Texas Tech, 431 yards passing, threw for 5 touchdowns, no picks, and ran for another touchdown.
And you're matching him up with Rhett Lashley coming from SMU. It's a nice combination of things. At the end of the day, I'm smiling in the ear. I'm super excited, but we have to take the wait and see approach, man. You know, don't knock on wood, but we got to be careful about injuries. We got to be careful about, and no pun intended, crowning people in advance. You know, they have to go out and produce. And then, of course, those first couple of weeks, we have Temple and Wagner and UAB, teams that he's used to playing in the AACs, play Temple. So being able to play Wagner and teams like that, kind of, I wouldn't say a 3-game sample size easy stretch, because at Miami, when we lose to FIU and La Tech, it's not just easy to walk in and think we're going to beat anyone. But it's something easy to where it can start to build that chemistry offensively and start clicking as running back, offensive line, wide receiver, QB, tight end. Get in sync with Coach Rhett Lashley and how he wants to go up tempo and how he wants to call things. And then we go up into East Lansing 4 weeks into the season. So it'll be something that it's much better than having to throw Jaron Williams to the Wolves with a 10, 11 win UF team to start off his career. So pretty excited about where it's going to go.
Got the Wholesome One on the line. Please check him out right here on YouTube, HOLSUM, and the number 1, Wholesome One, breaking down some Miami football with us here this afternoon for the next 45 minutes or so. So we appreciate your comments and questions. I will get to them in just a second. Wholesome One ramped up about Quincy Roche, and the numbers jump off the page for ERIQ King. Offensively, defensively, again, when I talk about 50 touchdown guys not walking around the street or finding them on every street corner, you could say the same thing for guys that rack up 19 tackles for loss and 13 sacks, as Quincy Roche did this past season for Temple.
Absolutely. The 6'4", 235-pound edge rusher. He brings a dynamic attribute to the University of Miami's edge rush. Am I still there?
Yeah, you're with me.
Okay. All right. I kind of froze on my screen, so I'll just flow. Now the biggest thing since Manny Diaz has come to the University of Miami has been the edge rush. Adding edge rush and coming after the QB, whether we were in a 4-3 when he first got here in 2016, the hybrid 4-3, 4-2-5 in 2017, and then the 4-2-5, 18 and 19. Just being able to get after the QB. It's one of the biggest things, and that's what helped Miami when in our heyday was the athleticism of the fronts. You know, we used to take linebackers and make them defensive ends and make defensive ends defensive tackles. It really got after the passer. Now, bringing in Quincy Roche, that's only going to add more to what we have. Losing Trevon Hill, losing John Garvin, and all the production that they had here, we still keep one of the best defensive ends in the country in Gregory Rousseau, and now give him a playmate. Now, the biggest thing about over the last couple of years is that the person who had the high statistics the year before, now he's going to get the slide protection and the double team. So now Gregory Rousseau is going to get the double team. They're not going to let the 6'6", 6'7" dude get after the QB. Now that's going to open up for Quincy Roche. That's going to open up for Javari Harvey, and also Jalen Phillips, former 5-star from UCLA who was in the transfer portal last year that we got. He's been able to really get his weight back up with Coach Feely in the weight room, and he's put himself back together pretty well after the wrist surgery. So the defensive end room, and that's not even talking about 6'5" Cam Williams from Chaminade Madonna. That's not even talking about Chance Williams, who signed with the University of Miami, the number 4 defensive end, the weak side defensive end in the country, from North Florida, who signed. So the defensive end room is really, really big at Miami. But the biggest thing is now we're matching Rick Lashley's high-powered, high-scoring offense with this pass rush. Those two things have to work together. You can't rush the passer if you're not scoring enough points that people have to pass the ball to be in the game. You know, then we have a whole bunch of TFLs, and now we're still stopping the run. So Quincy Roche had 19 TFLs and 13 sacks this past season, the AAC Defensive Player of the Year. So we're matching up the AAC Defensive Player of the Year from 2019 with the AAC Offensive Player of the Year in 2018 and bringing them to the ACC Coastal. So it sounds good on paper. It's a nice headline. It's nice titles. But at the end of the day, these guys still got to put on our uniform and show what they did in those other schools, both at Temple and at Houston. And we got to see it in the orange and green.
I think I've got all those letters straight. We've got the wholesome one on the line talking Miami football. So we invite you to leave us your comments and questions. We'll get to them in just a second. Fresh 3542 on the line talking about the Florida State wide receiver who entered the transfer portal in mid-December before their bowl game against Arizona State. That would be Trayshawn Harrison. Caught 27 passes and 2 touchdowns this year. Do we know anything about his possibility in coming to Coral Gables?
The funny part about that is, Mark, I don't want any Tallahassee touching my program.
Don't want it.
No, none whatsoever. None. I don't want that mediocrity. I don't want those type of guys in our program. I honestly don't even know who that is, and I don't care to know who that is. I don't want it in my program.
786 Canes. You got to understand, we don't all work a 9 to 5 here. So believe me, I'm working enough. 786 Canes. I work plenty. Work plenty.
Canes is from Alonzo 1219's channel. He's a great dude, man. He always gets on me about not being at work or at school. You know, grad school is a little different as far as the flexibility of the flexibility of our schedules and things of that nature. And then after the championship game, we've just been lifting weights with the football program. So this has been exciting to have some freedom and be able to come on and do this with you. Ben Pratt, hit the like button. Ben, we appreciate you encouraging everyone to hit the like button. That is key. So without KJ Osborne, without Jeff Thomas, looking at the wide receiver core and not necessarily wanting to go the Tallahassee route to bring anybody in, are you comfortable with the way the wide receivers stack right now? Yes and no. At the same time, the production at wide receiver after this season has been down. But at the same time, guys like Mark Pope, that's someone who I'm very excited about. And he's one of those players that I definitely hyped this offseason. And I think when he does get a chance to be our number 1 wide receiver, I'm not going to technically say he can be a Stacey Coley or Amon Richards, but he's going to be Mark Pope. And what Noodles is his nickname from Miami. What Noodles does is he scores touchdowns. I mean, even if you look at him this year, he had 3 touchdowns. Whenever he gets a chance to get the ball in his hands and just play football, don't overthink it, run the routes, beat the wide receiver, and catch the football, he scores touchdowns. So I'm excited about what Mark Pope can bring to the table. Truly am. But at the same time, you can't do it by yourself at this level. You can't. And in a spread, you need to have multiple wide receivers. I'm also looking for Mike Harley as a senior, someone who scored his first touchdown against Bethune-Cookman this year, someone who has worked his behind off. I mean, Mike Harley's like 5'9", buck 89, maybe. He's a hard-working young man. I mean, he's one of the hardest-working blockers. He, when we do those now routes or those RPOs, he would go and try to block linebackers. You knew he couldn't, but he gave effort. And that's the biggest thing. He was a humble, hard-working guy. Now, I don't know if he's going to be Braxton Berrios of 2017, but Mike Harley as a senior is someone that kind of came onto the scene for us, someone that the quarterbacks could trust catching the football and doing the best that he could with the ball in his hands. I think Mike Harley can take another step. But if you want to ask for a breakout player, Mark, I'm going with D. Wiggins. Woo! D. Wiggins, 6'3", blazing. I mean, you see the post route against Tallahassee and also the Louisville bomb. I mean, this dude flies off the snap. Good routes. Now, one thing about D. Wiggins is he runs kind of awkward. he runs wobbly, but man, D. Wiggins is a speedster. He's also a very humble, quiet young man, but he gives his all. And that's the thing. There's a lot of talent at this wide receiver position. I think the complexity of the previous route trees in the system is what held our players back. And I'm not here to call on people's jobs, but we're going on our third wide receiver coach in 3 seasons. So that should say something about that. But at the end of the day, man, the talent at Miami has to be, it's undeniable. It's talent there. And to be honest with you, if a lot of those young men played at any other institution that had them in the spread, if Mark Pope was a Florida Gator, if D. Wiggins was, I'm not going to say LSU or Alabama, but if he was at an FAU or something like that, where they were throwing the ball, you would know about these young men. And that's why I wish Jeff Thomas could have came back and played in this system. But he's going to go on and have a solid NFL career, hopefully with the Kansas City Chiefs, because I would love to see him putting up numbers like crazy.
Yeah, Kuzman, Chris on the line asking about De'Ara King's stats and what his projected stats could be. Well, I'm thinking – Miami doesn't want to go too pass heavy. They want to be balanced. So he should be in the 25 to 30 attempt range per game. Mm-hmm. He should be throwing for about 230 to 250 per game. So what's that put him at? Maybe 3,200 yards. And, can we expect he's going to throw 36 touchdowns? Well, the two quarterbacks last year, N'Kosi Perry and Jaron Williams, I think threw 27 between them. So maybe he still throws for 35 because he's just a better quarterback. I'm not saying he's more talented than they are. They were all roughly rated about the same coming out of high school. Certainly Williams and Perry were generally. But he should be able to give you 35 touchdowns and 10 picks. And that should be the season he gives you at about 500 to 600 on the ground.
Absolutely. And especially with how this system is. If you do, and I did extensive research into Rick Lashley when he was even at UConn, the 1 year that he kind of took that step out and then stepped back into his years at Auburn, his years at Arkansas State. He went from an air raid and then mixed up at SMU with being able to run out of that spread. So I think we're truly getting Rick Lashley at an important time in his career where it's not super pass happy and it's not just a power spread either. It's a nice hybrid combination to where he spent 2 years at SMU having to run out of the spread also. I think it's a great marriage, man. I think it's going to be good. And at the end of the day, Miami's been champions on this right here for years. On NCAA 14, Miami has been champions for years. It's going to be the buy-in-ness and us as analysts and fans, because I'm still a fanatic, we have to give this thing its time. Bringing the toxicity on social media and saying, F everybody and fire everybody, that doesn't do any good for our program. We have to realize this isn't 1985. This isn't 1989. There's great facilities. There's good to great coaching at almost all 136 colleges that play Division I football. So what's going to separate Miami from those things is a buy-in all the way through the program. What made LSU this year was a buy-in from the president and the AD all the way down to the water girls, all the way down to the Twitter fans. Everyone was, let's go all in with football.
Yeah, I've got a whole lot of that stuff too, a lot of that paper stuff. It's real cheap, Wholesome One. You can get a lot of it for a little. It doesn't mean a whole lot.
Always teams that to the east of North Dakota State, over in Minneapolis, University of Minnesota.
Yep.
I was watching your prediction videos from last night or earlier today, and you didn't even pick them to have 11 wins.
I went 7-5 on Minnesota.
Exactly. And that's how they usually are. Now, what they're going to do in 2020, that's up to how the Big Ten adjusts to what Minnesota has done. And that's the art of coaching, continuously adjusting. And I don't think that Miami had been doing that over the last decade and a half. We were just like, all right, Travis Benjamin, Stacey Coley, just run a bomb. We're going to throw the ball as far as we can. And you run under it, catch it, and then we'll try to play defense. You can't do that anymore. You got to scheme. You got to plan. You got to put things together. And that's how you take that next step as a program.
We thank you, Andy. We thank you, A1 Otero. We thank you, Sam, for encouraging people to hit the like button. It helps us tremendously if you just take that 5 seconds and hit the like button. Got the Wholesome One on the line talking Miami football. And if it got you just a little bit bothered, Wholesome One, in mentioning that a Florida State player would transfer to Miami, how about mentioned, and it's a foregone conclusion now because Felipe Franks has transferred to Arkansas, but it's mentioned here in the live chat from Navy Thomas 8, one of our good viewers. Miami couldn't get Franks? ? Like you would want Felipe Franks? No, you take ERIQ King.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, Felipe Franks, if you want to be honest with you, Felipe Franks almost lost to a 6-7 Miami team. You know, that Florida Gator program took a different level when he was no longer the QB there.
Yeah, so he's going to try to resurrect his career. Not that he had a bad season. Certainly had a much improved season under Dan Mullen. But I think that has a lot to do with Dan Mullen and his ability to coach quarterbacks and what Felipe Franks did in 2018.
I mean, just honestly, let's think about what Dan Mullen did at Hale State up in Mississippi State. And my cousin Brandon Holloway played for him at Mississippi State. Like what he did with that program that was never anything. I mean, Ole Miss was the big brother in that state. And I mean, that Egg Bowl is going to be amazing to watch. Mike Leach and the Lane Train. I just want to be in there for the press conferences. I know this is Miami, but just to bring that up with Dan Mullen is a good coach, man.
I hear you.
Really
yeah, we talk Miami nonstop with the Wholesome One right here at Miami Hurricanes Live. We bring in typically Cam Underwood to help us out on this show, who's a staple for us. So certainly don't think that Cam's gone away, but Cam's busy this week. And in addition to Cam's analysis, love talking to the Wholesome One, love getting his analysis. So it doesn't need to be either or. And hopefully Dwayne and I and the Wholesome One here, we are going to get together each and every week to talk Miami football and either take a live stream in and get your comments and questions directly, or we're going to review some of the recent videos and I'll pick and Dwayne and I will select some of the best comments and questions from the week and we'll have at it. So leave him right here. I actually have a couple
of questions here from the Cam Underwood live that were left under there. I have some questions that were left under there.
Yeah, so I will do my best again to get to the comments and questions, but in the meantime, I'll feed you Wholesome One, or if there's anything that you'd like to take off on, definitely go to it. But is there a positional unit that has you the most curious going into spring camp?
Cornerback. Defensive back has had. What's up, Dante? Good to have you in here, man. A mentor of mine. A great man. But to be honest with you, losing Trajan Bandy, who actually had a pretty tough junior season, but losing him and the experience that Trajan Bandy brought to the table, and having Al Blaze Jr. and DJ Ivy and Corey Couch and Christian Williams, those four young men, none of them be at least able to walk into a bar and they were starting at the University of Miami or playing significant times, man, the defensive back room, but more specifically the cornerback group. And not to call them out or demean them or anything of that nature, but it has me most curious or intrigued the step that they're going to take. A lot of people talk about the step from year 1 to year 2, but if you listen to guys like Nick Saban and Dabo, they actually talk about the big step from year 2 to year 3, because you transition from a special teams guy or a red shirt guy into someone who's matriculating a little bit more and more snaps. You think about your Jaquan Johnsons, your Shedrick Redwines, who in 2016, they played some nickel, they played some special teams, they played some free, some strong, just to give some guys a blow, and then became starters in 17 and both were either first or second team all ACC at their respectable positions. But at Miami, at the cornerback position, due to an up and down situation with the recruiting and people committing and then actually signing other places, we were extremely thin at the cornerback position. So we didn't have the luxury of redshirting or the luxury of having someone on the bench and then they just play special teams and you could point and go over things and film us and see this is what happens when you do that. They had to just go out there and throw them in the fire and hope they turn into a diamond. But and all of these young men had some up and downs in this previous season. Al Blaze Jr., probably to me our best all-around corner. Someone that was able to do good in the run, do good in the pass coverage. It was still up and down and shaky. A lot of people predicted him more as a safety like his late, great father was, but he came here to play corner and did a suffice job. Someone who struggled big time was DJ Ivey, but then he turned around and he struggled versus Georgia Tech and then went on like an elite 3-week gap where you had the 2 interceptions versus Pitt. The next week, he has a key swatted pass versus Tallahassee that led to a Bubba Bolden interception. And then the next week versus Louisville had another interception. So he had a nice 3-week stretch, but then he took another dive, the Duke, FIU, and La Tech. And that's what you expect from an inexperienced young man, an 18, 19-year-old guy playing Division I ball as a field side corner. It's not the easiest thing to do. To me, probably one of the hardest positions in sports is corner. 9 times out of 10, field side corner with all of that side of the field to handle, especially in the scheme that we run. You really need those big-time 5-star guys at those cornerback positions in that 4-2-5. Corey Couch is a young man. Remember when I said he was 148 pounds and you laughed when we did the position by position in them? Exactly. You know, he's upwards of 170 now, so he put on some nice weight and eating well and probably a lot of trips to Qdoba and Chipotle and getting his life together, man. But he played majority special teams, but played some nickel. And when he got on the field, he was able to make some tackles on special teams, had a lot of holding penalties on special teams. But that shows that he was given a lot of effort. He just wanted to dominate his guy, and it turned out to be some holding penalties. Same thing you could say for Christian Williams, who could have had his first career interception versus Bethune-Cookman. But it was a dropped interception, but it was a swatted pass on the last play of the game that led to being able to keep Bethune-Cookman off the scoreboard. They had a nice drive all the way to the 20-yard line, and he went for the ball, and he dropped it, but it was a swatted pass, and he kept the shutout. So that was pretty good, man. So we also are bringing in Marcus Clark. Now, Marcus Clark is from Orange Park, and an elite dynamic player I spoke about in our previous live as an athlete, wide receiver, free safety type of playmaker. So we're pretty excited about where he's going to come and do things. But we also had a commitment from Isaiah Dunson, who is a 2020 commit. I thought he was 2021, but he's a 2020 commit and is supposed to be signing with us in roughly 14 days or so for the second National Signing Day. He's committed, and he's a 4-star, 6'2" corner. So the cornerback position is going to be unproven, but having good edge rush and scoring a lot of points is going to help those two positions at a high level.
So I'm checking out all the comments on the live chat concerning my content and who I root for, and am I a Miami fan or not a Miami fan? So look behind me. So we got all sorts of football helmets back there, and we got all sorts of football helmets over here. And if you check out my tag on my channel, It doesn't say that I'm the voice of Miami football. I'm the voice of college football. So I cover everybody. I love college football. I cover everybody. And truth be known, and I've stated this many times, I don't advertise it. I don't throw it out there all the time. I try to stay neutral, try to stay unbiased. I believe that that's an impossibility, but I do my very best. I'm an Ohio State fan, but I love college football. I watch as much as I possibly can. I keep track of as much as I possibly can. So we've got a Miami live stream that we do every week. We got a Florida State live stream we do every week coming up at 2:00 Eastern time. We've got Ohio State, and I'm going to be doing more live streams, team specific live streams. That's what we do here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. So if you want Miami analysis from Miami people like the Wholesome One, Cam Underwood, lock it in right here, but obviously trail them to their platforms as well. So for the Wholesome One, it's HOLSUM, the number 1 right here on YouTube. But if you want college football analysis across the board, plus Miami included, you'll hear some Miami analysis from me as well, but I'm going to cut it straight from my perspective. All right. Wholesome One. People are asking about the wide receiver coach.
All right.
Any idea what's going to happen there?
Let's do this. So Stubblefield has decided to take the Penn State job. And, man, Miami sucks.
I put them all up there. As long as they're not defamatory, they
I'm
go
sorry,
up there.
that just threw me off.
We welcome in all college football fans. Most of you are Miami fans on the live Miami chat, of course, but we've got football fans from all over the map.
Hey, listen, opinions are perfectly fine, dog. You're right. 6 and 7 was a sucky season. You have a good point, man. But at the end of the day, if you're an Iowa State fan, I don't even know if you should be talking about sports. I'll leave it at that. Anyway, Coach Stubblefield, he wasn't a Miami fan, okay? Him and Dan Enos and Butch Berry all came as a package deal, and we had to deal with what we had to deal with there. I was never really a big Stubblefield guy at the end of the day, because to me, you have to have people that can recruit that position. And Coach Cooney, who is the head of recruiting, is the main recruiter for all the wide receiver signees, excluding Daslam Worsham. He was the other guy that Stubblefield was. Him and Enos were the main recruiters for Daslam Worsham. But Michael Redding and Xavier Restrepo, those guys mainly heard from Coach Cooney. He's our head of recruiting. That from the whispers that we're hearing, the thought process is to promote him up to wide receiver coach, and he's huge. The players love him, love Coach Cooney. And he is someone who worked his behind off to get that position, a former head coach in South Florida. And now we're bringing him, as a recruiter now. Replacements at the wide receiver position, there are a couple of guys that could do well here at the University of Miami. I made a live specifically talking about Coach Kevin Beard. Now, the reason why I spoke about Kevin Beard, he's a former national champion here at the University of Miami. It's a young man I'm used to saying that. He's a man that had to work his behind off to play a lot, had an injury, and then later on in 2003, towards the end of his career, became the guy. But he was here when Santana Moss was here. He was here when Andre Johnson was here. You know, it was big name Reggie Wayne. It was big name guys that were at Miami, and Kevin Beard was the other guy. But then when Kevin Beard came here in 2013, he even has videos where he was just breaking down routes and simple how to hold your hands and your stances and what certain stances give away that the route you're going to run and how you want all your stances to look the same. And of course, a lot of wide receivers say those type of things, but the way that he was breaking it down and simply saying, you know what it's like to make a play with that U on the side of your helmet? I know what it's like. Let me guide you. Let me teach you. I know what it's like to make plays with that U on your helmet. You know, things like that. It makes Miami different. And that's how you want to do things here at Miami. A second guy that a lot of people are talking about is Lamar Thomas, former big-time player here at the University of Miami. Now, Lamar Thomas is someone that, no disrespect to him, you know, hey, I would love to have him come in. He's someone who's really loved and begged for this job. He was at Louisville, I want to say 2014, when we went and got plastered up there in Brad Kire's first start. But he was a part of the Louisville staff. He's been at Louisville. He's been at Kentucky. I think he's still trying to get back into coaching. But the third name that a lot of people are talking about is the Duke wide receivers coach. And Taylor, I can't think of his last name off the top of my head. No, his first name is Taylor.
Wide receiver coach where?
At Duke. Taylor, can't think of his name. But the wide receiver coach at Duke is a big-time recruiter. Him and Rhett Lashley go back when they coached at Auburn together in their 2013 team that went to the national championship game. I think he's very – you look at the route tree and the route combinations that they were running at Duke and how his wide receivers knew how to get to the sticks and knew how to bring in the ball. And even us, they beat us back-to-back years. So Duke is actually doing something well. They are doing pretty well at Duke and beating Miami at Miami and at home for the first time in program history. So the wide receiver coach position, I think that's something where we have so much historic production and so much cachet at the wide receiver position that adding to that, you can have an alumni come in. You can have a former player. You can have a big-time recruiter because the talent at wide receiver is just big time, and they just need a chance to actually go out and prove it.
The Duke wide receivers coach's name, I don't know how you could forget this one, wholesome one. Trooper Taylor. Trooper
Taylor.
I don't know that I've ever heard that name before. That's a good one. I like that.
There we go. Trooper Taylor. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm usually really good at names and clicking. That one just went right over my head. Trooper Taylor. Because I was thinking of Taylor Stubblefield, and then when I was like, I know his last name's Taylor, but what's his first name? So that's huge.
There's a number of folks in the live chat that are excited about Jeremiah Payton at wide receiver.
We're not going to tell everybody about he's the one that's going to catch everybody off guard. We're not going to talk about Jeremiah. I'm just messing with y'all. Jeremiah Payton, that's someone when I flip back on the roster, that's someone that I didn't bring up who took a red shirt this year. I don't understand why Manny Diaz did it, but he took a red shirt this year. He played in our Sunday night football, and that means that all the red shirts and kind of the third stream guys, they play on Sunday night football, and the whole team kind of watches them go at it. And he has been one of those players that's making a big-time name for himself. He fits the eye test. He fits the measurable test. What people love to see is that 6'1", 6'2", 6'3" wide receiver, already over 200 pounds coming out of high school. That's what people love to talk about when it comes to wide receivers at the University of Miami, and wide receivers, period. They want 6'3", 215, runs a 4.2, blazing it. You know, they don't make those on trees, but we have a couple of them. And Michael Redding III, Jeremiah Payton at Miami, and D. Wiggins, big and fast. And if to a lot of people, those would be the three wide receivers that they would want on the field because of just the size and speed ability. But I'm pretty excited about Jeremiah Payton. I think it was a number 6 wide receiver in a 2019 class coming out of high school. 4-star recruit, someone who, when he committed to us, it was basically no one else. I didn't want to take visits anywhere else. I'm all Kane. I'm excited to see what he can do on the field too. I think he's going to make one of those big time catches that'll be remembered in the 2020 season.
Got the wholesome one on here talking Miami football. This is Miami Hurricanes Live, coming your way each and every week. Unfortunately, we can't lock down on a particular time each and every week, but if you lock in on the subscription, the notifications, turn on the bell, I will let you know each and every week when we're coming your way. Someone in the live chat, wholesome one's asking about Malachi Weidman. Are you familiar with him? He's a wide receiver out of Venice. The Crystal Ball at 247 Sports has him going to Florida State. He's the 24th rated wide receiver in the country, number 21 prospect in the Sunshine State.
Big time playmaker. He's a big time playmaker. Yes, he's leaning towards Tallahassee, and I think this offense is going to bring a lot of people in that are on the fence about coming to Miami. If we're able to produce, not necessarily the record. Of course, you want that 9, 10, 11 win season. But if you're out there playing great football and you're in every game and you're scoring points and things of that nature, that is going to recruit itself. The U recruits itself, but at the same time, if you can match that with great point production. Point production. Then you're going to have really, really high recruiting on the offensive side of the ball. Because, I mean, if you think about it, Mark, over the last couple of years when Manny Diaz was our defensive coordinator, we didn't bring any big-time defensive recruits in. Even though we were the number 3 or the number 8 or the number 13 or the number 25 defense, we still weren't bringing in big-time recruits. It was the system that they were able to come in and flourish. Well, if you have that on the offensive side of the ball, you bring in big-time recruits. Because if you're putting up numbers like Oklahoma, you see they bring in 5-star wide receivers every year because, or QBs, or transfers want to go there because they know they're going to go there and put up stats. And they're going to put up a whole bunch of numbers to go into the National Football League if you have a high marquee, high octane offense. And I'm thinking that that's what Rick Lashley is going to bring to the University of Miami.
Got a number of people in the live chat that are curious about Virginia Tech wide receiver Damon Hazelton. So Hazelton's a kid that originally signed at Ball State. He caught 51 passes for Ball State out of the MAC his freshman season. We've watched him for the last 2 years at Virginia Tech be an extremely productive wide receiver for them. Caught 51 passes in 2018, over 16 yards per catch, 8 touchdowns. Came back to score another 8 touchdowns this past season, 31 receptions, 500 yards. And that's with a pretty inconsistent marginal quarterback position at Virginia Tech. They went with Ryan Willis 2 years ago from Kansas when he took over for Josh Jackson, who got hurt the second or third game of the season. Willis came in, put up a pretty productive year, even though he's not a multi-talented guy. He came in from Kansas and put up a pretty good year. And then, of course, Virginia Tech this past year ran a lot of RPO and relied on the quarterback run with Hendon Hooker. And, of course, raced out to that 28-0 lead against Miami. And then it turned into a big ball game at 35-all before they put on that 2-minute drive to close out the game 42-35. But Damon Hazelton, yeah, he's caught 133 balls in the ACC and 20 touchdowns. So with that kind of productivity, and I've watched him, I haven't really taken note of how good he is. I've watched him probably play 10 to 15 times in my life, but nothing stood out. Just that he's dependable, he's reliable, he's a decent, first-rate ACC wide receiver.
I think he torched us a couple times. I don't know if he scored against us, but I know that he was putting up. But he won over 14 there, correct?
Yeah.
He definitely put up yards in that game. Hey, I'll take him, especially an ACC guy and someone on the ACC coach. And this was the thing about Javon Hill. And it later came out that he had a lot to say in those personal meetings. But the biggest thing is that the ACC Coastal is fearful of a good to great Miami. Because if they can have a sustainable, durable program, we would win it every single year. We've just been out-coached year in and year out when we play our Coastal teams because the Coastal is filled with solid coaches. It doesn't have a lot of talent. When you look at the ACC Coastal, which team puts out the most drafted players? It's almost always Miami over the 15 years that has put out the most drafted players. So that shows, and it's always been Miami that had the most and the highest ranked recruits. So that shows that it's a lot of talent. But the reason why Miami won it 1 out of 16 is because we have been out-coached throughout a decade and a half. So what Javon Hill spoke about coming from Virginia Tech is we would love to come to Miami. A lot of the people at Virginia, they would love to play at Miami. But they had to go there and work their behind off, and then they were coached up well to beat us. And he was just trying to get our players to understand what it means to carry this U and how everyone wants to beat us. Everyone wants to say they are undefeated versus Miami at Georgia Tech or undefeated versus Miami at Virginia Tech. They would love to have played at Miami and have that stage. And a lot of our players take that for granted. So to bring in someone else on the offensive side of the ball who could have that same approach to where it's like, man, y'all don't know what it's like to play against us. Y'all don't know what it's like to be envious of the U and to want to be a part of that U. And for him to come down from Virginia Tech and have his production come in and add to this wide receiver room, I would love to do that, especially because he's going to be a redshirt senior, correct? Because he's already played 2 seasons at Virginia Tech and at Ball State.
Yeah, so he's coming into his senior season. Yep.
Right. So it would be pretty well as far as the seniority because the only other senior we would have is Mike Harley. So he would add some true knowledge to the wide receiver room, and that would help, especially going from KJ Osborne to this man. That would be great to for these younger wide receivers to have a big brother to listen to and to hear from.
There's a lot of speculation in the live chat. I don't know if it's substantiated that even though Brian Hightower has entered the transfer portal, that he would like to come back to the team. I don't know where you stand on Brian Hightower. We certainly don't know what's going through the young man's mind,
right?
In terms of his profile as a player.
Right. Now, Brian Hightower is someone that if we give him a chance, any 50-50 ball, he's 9 times out of 10 going to win it. As you can see, he did it against LSU in 2018. This past season, he had the drop C's, but I think it was also the inaccuracy of the balls that we were throwing him. But he's a guy that anyone would love to have on their team. When I went and watched him at the couple of practices I was able to make when I was home in Miami, uncoverable. I mean, they would just throw the ball up, and he was just so big and strong. He would just attack the ball at his highest point, and it was nothing that the defender could do. Trajan Bandy couldn't stop him. Al Blaze Jr. couldn't stop him. DJ Ivy definitely couldn't stop him. Christian Williams couldn't stop him. They put Bubba Bolden out there. He couldn't stop him. It was just he was a big wide receiver that can attack the football at his highest point. I would love to have him added to this wide receiving core. And, I'm thinking that he's going to come back. I honestly think that he is going to – Richard Hill. So I have a nickname that I gave Bubba Bolden, Light Skin Warrior, and it kind of caught on big time, and a lot of people like to get on me about it. But, hey, he is that. He's a Light Skin Warrior. He's a dog, man. I love having Bubba Bolden back there. But Brian Hightower, definitely want to add him to it. Now, what I'm hearing about the reason why is because something happened in the wide receiver room with the players, him and his situation with the fellow wide receivers. And he has to get that squared away. Now, however they handle it, I don't know. I can't speak on how they would handle that situation. I don't know if it's physical or anything like that, or if they just want to sit and have a nice talk. But either way, they need to figure it out because we need Brian Hightower added to this wide receiving core moving into 2020 because he's a guy. And that's the thing about the transfer portal. Right? It's nice to bring these people in. But what about the people that put pen to paper and said, I want to be a Miami Hurricane, Mark? I'm coming here to be a part of the rebuild at Miami. He was a 2018 signee. He signed to Mark Richt. He signed when our program was on its upward trajectory as we thought it was. And he wanted to be a Miami Hurricane. We can't keep kicking the guys that want to be Miami Hurricanes out the door for these guys that just want to come and put on our uniform for 1 year and then they're gone.
Pigskin P, we thank you for the contribution. As always, if you love Clemson football or just want to talk college football in general, head on over to Pigskin Pete right here on YouTube as well to talk up some college football. Pigskin joins us on a regular basis to talk up the Clemson Tigers. Yella 265, thank you so much for the contribution. You guys don't have any idea how much we appreciate the contribution in any way. Definitely like the videos, though. Like the videos, leave the comments in the comment section of the videos. If you love Miami football, you go follow the Wholesome One right here on YouTube. Also, keep it locked in right here where we bring on Cam Underwood from State of the U on a regular basis. And the Wholesome One, this is going to be a weekly fixture, not necessarily a live stream, but we're going to bring the Wholesome One on each and every week to answer your questions on Miami football. And then you need to bear up and take a little analysis from me on Miami football from time to time as well when I've got something to say. But
Mark, you know how you get on our program, man. I was hurt on your last 2 videos. But like the people say, the truth hurts. the truth hurts, man. I didn't think you had to take the shots at Miami that you did, but they were all calculated haymakers. But we're going to bounce back. We're going to bounce back and we're going to pull this thing together. And I'm excited for the future of the University of Miami. At the end of the day, we have Manny Diaz. But Mario Cristobal is going to be the coach that's going to give us the national championship. And you heard it here first on Mark Rogers TV. From the host one.
Meaning, so Manny Diaz is going to clean up some things and take you to a better place, but Mario Cristobal is going to be the then next head coach in Miami.
I said it first here.
Let's mark it down. Timestamp this baby.
This is it.
This thing's going to go viral in about 3 years when Mario Cristobal becomes the next head coach at Miami after winning a couple more Rose Bowls probably at Oregon.
I'm telling you, he's gonna come back. He's gonna solidify it. He's gonna solidify it. And Mario, take it to the next level.
Very cool. We're gonna keep the Wholesome One locked down here for about another minute. I think you need to run, right?
Yeah, I got to get out of here. But
okay,
I can do.
We will let you run.
Got one more question for me. I can answer it and get out of here.
Let's see. We've got. What about McKinney as an assistant offensive line coach? Anything there?
I'm big on that. Actually, our offensive line coach was working out with Bryant McKinney just about 36 hours ago. He was in the facility, and Bryant was talking about how it meant so much to be welcomed back into the program, and he was so excited for that. So they were just working out and going over, kick steps and all type of different things that he wanted to add to the Miami Hurricanes because he's a former spread offensive lineman. And then Bryant McKinney is a former pro-style offensive lineman at Miami. So they were working out together and just bouncing ideas off of each other. So that would be exciting to bring him and have him a part of the program. But my thing is with adding former players, I'm all for it. I'm all for bringing those guys in, especially national champions that know how it should look and how they should be playing at the University of Miami. Other people aren't too high on bringing in former players, and they think that you got to be qualified. Listen, if you're a national champion, you're qualified, and I want you to bring that mindset and that influx into the University of Miami players that are here now.
Now, you run the risk of them running amok a bit here and there, like an Odell Beckham Jr. and the fiasco that we saw at the Sugar Bowl. But that's what every program wants. They want their stars coming back because that's great for recruiting.
Yeah.
That builds the community. That shows that, hey, we develop NFL stars. They come back. They're part of the program. That's what we do here. Wholesome One, we appreciate you stopping by. Thank you so much. We know you got a ton of obligations, but the Wholesome One's going to join us here each and every week. Make sure you're locked in on the notifications so you know when he's going to join us. You have a great day, sir.
Thank you very much. Go Canes.
Couple last things here. We got Pigskin Pete on the line. Miami, Florida State owe the ACC $2. That I get. Florida State and Miami have not been holding up their end of the bargain to the ACC in terms of making it a competitive league. But I owe the ACC $2, Pigskin Pete. I just call it like it is, and this league's in bad shape right now. Do I think that the league is in bad shape long term? No. You're in a great geographic location. The schools have money for the most part, the ones that need the money. And again, the geography works out for the ACC. The ACC is going to be fine, or should be, if they have competent people in the right places long term. But right now, the ACC is the worst of the 5 leagues. And one last comment we need to get to. We thank you so much for the contribution from Chugmo Beer, $10. We appreciate the super chat contribution. Great show, Mark, and the one and only Wholesome One. So again, the Miami Hurricanes live show, whether that be with Cam Underwood or with the Wholesome One, you're going to have to dodge and dig and figure out when it's going to be broadcast each and every week. But I will update you as soon as possible each and every week with the live notifications. So just subscribe here to MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Turn on the bell. You get the notifications, and you're all set regardless of what we do. We've got Florida State Seminoles live coming up tonight at 7 o'clock. Everybody boo at the same time. Okay. And we also are talking Ohio State football live right here in seconds, right here at MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. So keep it locked in right here. We'll be back in just a minute.